Good morning, Morning Manna family. It is such a delight to be with you as we talk through 6 do's and don'ts of living in the gap, that place between the promise of God and its fulfillment. Every one of us has some promises we're hoping for. I hope that you are hoping for. In fact, if you are watching right now, and I know we're not watching all at the same time, but somebody in the team will go back and look through. But if you're believing for a promise, just say that in the comments somewhere. Say, I'm believing for a promise. I'll tell you what, I'll look back several times after this airs, and I will pray with you for the promise of God that it will show up in your life. But as all of us wait, we all know what it is to be in that gap. What can we learn from the life of Abraham as he walks through this multi-year, 25 years from when God promised Isaac to when Isaac came, and even after, what does he do? So there's this really interesting passage, and you've heard it a million times. I don't need to tell the story. It's when God says, "Will you give me Isaac?" And it's always awkward for us. They're like, God wants a human sacrifice? No, God never wanted a human sacrifice, but that is how people operated back then. I know, bananas, crazy. And so he tends to speak in familiar ways, in ways that people are familiar with so that they can understand. And really, God's after something so much deeper. Abram's already passing the test. At that point, his name is Abraham, but Abraham is already passing the test. As Isaac says, what's the sacrifice? And God will provide. But still, Abraham demonstrates something that all of us need to be willing to do. And that is give it all up for God. Sacrifice for God. And I'm not talking about sacrificing a chicken or a turtle dove or anything else, but I mean being willing to lay it all down. What would you lay down for God? Because here's the thing. Sometimes when there's been a gap, and we know we've heard God, and you probably have, like everything lines up, and it's not like God showed up and audibly, "Son, this is God speaking." I mean, if God spoke to you that way, I'd love to hear about it. But a lot of times, it's just this internal knowing. God's going to do this. I have faith in this. I'm trusting for this. But sometimes, if we've been living with a promise from God, the promise becomes what our whole life is about. And the truth is, our life is about the God of the promise, not the promise itself. So it's a test for all of us. What are you willing to give up for Him? Are you willing to even give up the promise if it means you'll have God? And that's the test that Abram passes. He's willing to sacrifice Isaac because he's after God. And of course, God provides. He always will. For some of us, it won't always be that what we thought we were going to have remains, but God will always show up for us when we're willing to give up everything for Him. So, what do you do in the gap, or even after you've received the promise? You're willing to lay it all down for God. Be willing to sacrifice for God. God bless you. Have a great, great day.